All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the session on building high-quality models using SageMaker quickly. My name is Karthik Bharati. I lead product management and focus on product growth, partnerships, and product innovation in SageMaker team. And my colleague, Ram Vegiraju, he's the ML solution architect, specializing on a whole bunch of areas on SageMaker and working closely with customers. Both of us are part of the service team, and we live, breathe, and work on ML on a daily basis. We're pretty excited here to share some of the capabilities that we have in SageMaker and also show some cool demos. Before we get into the presentation, just a quick show of hands. How many of you use or create machine learning models on a regular basis? Okay, that's many of you here. Okay, and how many of you are familiar with SageMaker? Okay, that's more of you. That's great, that's great. And how many of you are data scientists in this audience? Okay, some of you. And how about folks who are business users, who look more from the business point of view? Okay, some of you here. How many of you are ML engineers or use AWS services to build your solution? Okay, that's a good mix. So just setting the context, we're going to be covering SageMaker as it applies to many of you, right? How it applies to data scientists, to business users, and to ML engineers, and what we have to offer from a capability perspective. So what we're going to do is cover the following topic. We'll look at the different personas for SageMaker. We'll look at some of the low-code and the no-code capabilities that SageMaker has to offer. And if you're a code-savvy person, you use AWS, you're familiar with writing code, there are a whole bunch of options for you. And finally, we'll also look at how you can learn and experiment with ML. Purely, hey, I want to sign up for a course, learn ML, and then prototype. Right? So there's something for you too. And we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. Okay, so at Amazon, we have a comprehensive ML stack that offers the best of breed breadth and depth capabilities for machine learning, right? It is a three-layered stack with the bottom layer offering many of the ML frameworks that you would typically use, like the PyTorch or the MXNets of the world. In fact, a lot of our innovation and contribution goes back into these frameworks, and these are optimized to run on AWS. Just to put some numbers into perspective, over 90% of the cloud-based PyTorch and the cloud-based MXNet TensorFlow workloads, they run on AWS. Right? So in addition to the popular frameworks, we also offer compute in terms of GPU and CPU hardware, and a few of which are in-house innovations, right? Innovations that you would use for training and inference when you're building your ML models. The top layer of the stack is finished AI services. Typically, if you want to integrate those machine learning services into your applications, you can easily use any of the AI services that are available today. You could use, for example, recognition for vision-related use cases. You can use Poly if you're trying to do a text-to-speech scenario. And on the converse, you can use transcribe if it is from a text-to-speech use case. So a whole bunch of services that let you rapidly build ML application. And in the middle layer of the stack, where we're going to spend bulk of our time today, is on SageMaker. And SageMaker provides a comprehensive ML operating system and an IDE so you can build your ML applications and machine learning models quickly. At the center of which you have SageMaker Studio, and we'll spend a lot of time on saying how you can use SageMaker Studio as the IDE to build your ML models. So before we go into the capabilities, just a quick background on how ML is driving value creation, right? Typically, it starts off with a use case, a business use case, right? So there's a need, for example, maybe in a financial scenario where you want to identify who are the fraudsters, right? So fraud detection becomes a use case, and therefore you want to build a machine learning model. Or maybe it's a marketing scenario where you're looking at your data set and trying to identify potential leads who have a higher chance of translating into customers. So as you get these use cases, you want to be able to translate that to your machine learning model. So typically, the business user now is going to hand off to a data scientist or a data engineer, and who then would look at which are the data sources I need to use, right? Once you look at your data sources, you would clean the data, you would transform the data, and you would make sure that you have the right set of features, which are just attributes of your data set, that you can use to build your model. Once you have your data set available, then you start to train your model. There's a particular algorithm you would choose. You would do what is called a training run, identify which values of the parameters give more accurate model, and finally, once you have the model, you would deploy it. And deploying is essentially making an endpoint available that you can use for querying for your predictions. So that sort of is your workflow, and as you progress along the workflow, the data scientist role then transitions into what's an ML engineer role, who then deploys the models and makes it available in a scalable manner in production. We also note that this process is iterative, so it's not like a one single shot process, but then it's iterative. It takes a few weeks or in a few months, depending on the use case, size of your data set, complexity, and so on. What's important that it takes time, and there are multiple personas who are involved in ensuring that model is available in production. So looking at the different personas in a little more detail, right? Amazon SageMaker makes ML accessible to all of those personas in a cost-effective manner, right? The blue box that you see on your left are traditionally the personas that SageMaker catered to, I would say back in 2017 or 2018, right? A data scientist who would look at building a machine learning model, writing a set of code, optimizing it, and managing it, right? So that was a traditional use case, and we still do a lot of investment and capabilities in that space. What we heard from customers was, how can business users build those machine learning models in a quick manner without actually writing code, right? You want to be able to use a sort of a low code or a no code tool to be able to build that machine learning model, and then if you wanted to fine tune it, you want to collaborate with your data scientist. We also heard from data engineers who wanted to discover, visualize, and analyze the data as you prepare it for building the models. This process required a sort of switching back and forth between the tools, which was sort of a hurdle, and the ask was, hey, can you streamline it so it's more easier when we're building models? We also heard from students and researchers who did not want all of the production capabilities, right? But they were really learning ML, and you want to spin up a notebook, write a ResNet model, maybe just to do an image classification use case, and that should be quicker with low setup, low configuration, and even at low cost, right? So those are the kind of feedback that we heard. And the underlying theme was each of these personas would collaborate with each other. A data scientist would collaborate with a business user, data scientists would collaborate among themselves, data scientists would collaborate with the data engineer for data preparation, and so on, right? So the models, the artifacts, the code, whatever is being generated would be shared and collaborated among these different personas. So what we will do is we'll start off with the low-code and no-code capabilities of SageMaker, starting with Amazon SageMaker Canvas. SageMaker Canvas was a GA launch at re:Invent last year. It lets business users build and deploy machine learning models without writing code. In fact, without having any ML experience. If you know you have a data set, like let's say in a spreadsheet or a CSV, you can point to that, build your model, and Ram is going to show a cool demo around it. So with Amazon SageMaker Canvas, you can point to your data set, you can look at your shape of your data visually, have Canvas identify the model that would be most accurate. You can even have the model translate into a code which can be handed off to a data scientist. And a data scientist is the expert at fine-tuning that model if you need more accuracy. And you can hand it off back to the business user who can then deploy it back in Canvas. Another nice feature of Canvas is you have a usage-based pricing model. So it lowers your TCO, and unlike other software vendors, you have a easier way to get started with Canvas. So a related capability is Amazon SageMaker Jumpstart. Jumpstart lets you easily build ML models with pre-built solutions. There are over 15 plus solutions that come with data set that you can directly deploy, and if it matches your use case, you're up and running with an ML application in a matter of few minutes. We also have over 150 open source ML models. These are pre-trained, so if you're looking at any of the common, say NLP use cases or CV use cases, computer vision or the natural language processing use cases, you can have those models readily available to you. We also integrate with many of the popular model zoos. There's also integration with Hugging Face, which is another open source model zoo. So you can use all of those goodness in building your ML application. Finally, Jumpstart offers a bunch of getting started content. So once you log into the SageMaker Studio experience, you can fire up Jumpstart and build your ML application. Some of the pre-built applications that we have range from predictive maintenance and demand forecasting all the way till churn prediction. These are the more common use cases that we hear across different verticals, right? You can pick and choose these solutions which come with CloudFormation templates, if you're familiar with just deploying them into your AWS environment. And they also come with pre-built data sets, which you're welcome to use, or point them to your own custom data set and build your solution. Finally, in the low-code, no-code space, I want to touch upon SageMaker Autopilot. Autopilot lets you quickly build machine learning models in a scalable manner, again, without writing code, or you have the option to use an SDK version of Autopilot, which lets you go into all of the code capabilities. So it's sort of I would say, a hybrid where you can choose between a code-based or a no-code-based approach. With Autopilot, you point to your data set, you look at it in S3, you look at the set of target parameters that you want to output, whether you want auto selection of the model. Autopilot has the capability to just build its own model based on the shape of the data, or you could identify which type of model and algorithm that needs to be used. And once that's done, Autopilot can also deploy the model and have an endpoint available to you. So it's quite powerful in the sense that SageMaker Canvas also uses Autopilot in the backend for some of the ML learning models. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Ram to show us a cool demo of both Canvas and Jumpstart, so you get a flavor of the both no-code and low-code capabilities. Take it away, Ram.
Cool, yeah. Thank you, Karthik. And I'll let this get on screen real quick. So this is the SageMaker console in general. For those of you that have visited it before or not, you can kind of pretty much track every step of the machine learning lifecycle in this UI right here. And the main parts that we'll be working with, the SageMaker domain section that you see right here, you can pretty much create and onboard different users. Quick setup is the easiest way generally of getting set up. If you have authentication requirements, you can use IAM or SSO. But essentially, when you create a user, that gives you access to the 3 different domains that you see right here: Studio, RStudio, and Canvas. To get started, at least we'll look at Canvas, which is the no-code ML solution that we've built. So once you've created your user, you can launch an app for Studio or Canvas, and RStudio if you get the license. But I've already created one for this session, and I've launched the SageMaker Canvas app. So this takes you to a different UI pretty much here. And what this does is, as you can see, you can import data sets right here, and I've imported the popular Iris multi-label classification data set. And what Canvas does is it pretty much takes a lot of the tabular data and it pretty much does like feature engineering / data analysis and visualization. It generates reports for you on an automatic type basis. So if you go to a model, this is a model that I've already prepared. I can select my S3 data source from my data sets, which I've uploaded. And then using that, after I've selected it, I can choose to build a model, right? And here you can filter this the way you want. So for example, right here, my model recipe, ID was one column that was already existing there, but I wanted to remove that. So I just filtered that out in the column names. You can do that if you have any features you don't necessarily want to work with, and you can select that. And then the next part that comes is after a few minutes of uploading, you'll be able to see a grid level view of general statistics for the tabular data, so like the distribution of your data, what you might be working with. A lot of common like matplotlib, seaborn type visualizations are automatically presented for you using Canvas. And then the next key is you can also filter this. So if you have any SQL code or basic group by statements that you might want to work with in pandas, stuff of that sort, you can filter these automatically without having to do any of that by just specifying like the column name, what attributes you want to filter, what value, if you have a greater than value that you want to see, and you want to see the distribution for those. So that's where the power of Canvas comes. It automates a lot of the EDA for you as well. At the moment, it only supports tabular data, but essentially a lot of the pre-processing work that you might have to do out of code, it's taken care of and automated for you. And what I've done is there's two different types of builds that you can work with, a standard build and a quick build. I did a standard build because that runs pretty much for 1 to 3 hours. And what a standard build does is it takes the data set that you've given after this EDA has been completed, and it pretty much iterates across a variety of different models underneath the hood. So it could be sklearn, it could be XGBoost, and different ones. It pretty much stacks, compares, and analyzes them to see which one would give you the best performance. And to see the results of this, if you want more exposure into what happened underneath the hood, this shares a SageMaker Studio link right here. So if I create the SageMaker Studio link and analysis, you can then take that link and copy it right here. And if I open that within the same domain, so this goes to Studio now, SageMaker Studio, which we'll explore a bit more in a second. If we get here, this link will open up pretty much the different AutoML jobs that happen underneath the hood. So if you're curious for a report, what machine learning algorithms did we use, or what models did we use? If you click that AutoML job, you'll see these are all the different models that it iterated through and what the accuracy and the different metrics that were associated with were. So if I click on the most successful one that it chose for us, you'd be able to get more detail in regards to what's happening here exactly. So you'd get this as the best model ID. Now if we go through this, we're able to see different metrics here, and we can see pretty much like the hyperparameters that were used. So it gives you more granularity and visibility into what you worked with underneath the hood. And for this, you can also capture different artifacts. So for example, say you were curious, what exactly was the feature engineering code that was used underneath the hood? You can capture that Python file in S3. And if you're also curious what the model itself was, that model artifact is also captured for you. And to visualize all of this, you could also go back to the SageMaker console. And if you go to training jobs, you'll notice that my last X number of jobs were all these different models that ran when I created that standard build. So essentially, Canvas iterates through all of these underneath the hood and does a lot of the stacking and ensembling that you might have to do automated. And it gives you that visibility through that Studio link if you want to understand what exactly happened. If you are more oriented for understanding what happened underneath the hood, it gives you that flexibility. And here you see the final metrics in terms of just model status to score. And we could also predict. So there's two types of predictions that can happen. If you have a batch prediction, so a test data set that you might want to infer on, you could feed that in. Or if you have a single prediction, it'll load up the model. And as you can see, it has these bars right here for you to be able to adjust the values. So if I want to increase this and then update this for a prediction, it should still be Iris Setosa. So there's different flexibilities within Canvas. A great option if you really want to quickly get a machine learning model built without having to do any code work or any feature engineering. So that's one option. And the second option that Karthik was talking about is provides a bit more flexibility, and that's SageMaker Jumpstart. So I recommend this option for if you're completely new to SageMaker, if you already have any SageMaker experience, it's a great place to get started. So this right here is the Studio UI. So it's that Studio app that I open up right here with my user. So when I launch an app, I can launch Studio, which I've opened up here. And the first thing that pops out is Jumpstart. And you can also access it with this icon right here. And if I browse Jumpstart, you'll see that there's different pre-made solutions. So this is the CloudFormation templates that Karthik was talking about, not necessarily only with SageMaker, but also with the rest of our machine learning stack, like Poly, Lex, Transcribe that we were talking about. It shows pre-made solutions, how you can integrate with them and work around with them. But the main power really comes from the model zoo. So there's over 300 pre-trained models here. So oftentimes, if we just want to grab a model that's already done mass training, right? So for example, ResNet or like LightGBM, models that you could work with, it provides this model zoo pretty much for you to be access and directly deploy to an endpoint or train on a custom data set. And we'll explore that in a second, but the rest of Jumpstart that you could also walk through right here is there's different ways you can filter these solutions and models. So for example, there's domain type. So this would be NLP, computer vision, or tabular. And within that, you also have specific problem types, right? So image classification for computer vision, object detection. So anything of that sort, you can filter through here. And if there's a specific framework you need to adhere to, you could also pick it. So there's the popular ones for TensorFlow, PyTorch, LightGBM. There's a lot of models borrowed from other open source use, such as Hugging Face, as Karthik was saying. And if you just want a sample notebook to get started too, if you go all the way down to resources, you'll see different example notebooks that you could work with. And these are all starting 101 notebooks with SageMaker. So if you're completely new to SageMaker, you want to learn how to bring a TensorFlow model there, these all have different examples. If you want to use one of our 1P algorithms and be able to deploy it, this is a great option for getting started. And now going back to the model zoo, one of the most common use cases that we see is people are like, there's a pre-trained model, we just want to directly deploy it or train it on our own custom data set. So I grabbed this ResNet 18 model right here, which I've opened up in this tab. And this is the UI you'll see for each of the models in the model zoo. So you'll see that there's a deploy model configuration and a train model. So this model's already been trained, right? It's pre-trained, but sometimes we want to customize it for our specific data set. So you could provide a S3 location for a specific custom data set you might want to work with. And then you can also configure different types of things such as hyperparameters. And these already come with that specific model because they're tuned and created for that model in specific. So you can adjust all of these. You can train it on a specific instance, for example. So this is a training instance that you can select. You can name that training job, and you can iterate pretty much however many times you want with your own data set, or just if you don't want to use a custom data set, you can directly get to deployment. So if you see deployment configuration right here, this will automatically create an endpoint for you. You can select the instance type, and at the end of the day, that endpoint will be open for invocation and inference. And after deploying this endpoint, you should be able to see right here, I've created 2 model endpoints at the moment. You can see that I created a ResNet one right here. And if I open that up, you should be able to see that status is in service. Once again, you can see this in the UI and inference for endpoints. And if you're still new to SageMaker and you want to explore how can I invoke this endpoint exactly, I don't really know, I have an endpoint now, where exactly do I get started? The cool thing is Jumpstart provides a pre-made notebook, and that infers based off the model what you're dealing with, and it will automatically show you how to run inference. So once again, this boilerplate code is kind of provided for you. For example, this model does image classification, right? So if I run through this notebook, which I didn't create at all, this was all created by Jumpstart. If I iterate through this, right here, you can query the endpoint. So this is sample inference right here with that invoke endpoint call. You can take that, you can run through this, and as this is loaded, you can see the predicted labels, and it even gives you the flexibility to predict multiple labels. So you can take this boilerplate code, depending on your experience with SageMaker, and then pretty much use it in whatever way you need. If you already have inference code, this is not necessary, but if you want to get started with SageMaker inference, it's a great place to get started. So in summary, Canvas, great option if you don't want to do any coding. Jumpstart, a great option if you just want to get started with SageMaker. You even already have some prior experience, it's a great place to just go and quickly grab a pre-trained model. Even me working with SageMaker every single day, sometimes I don't want to build my own model or work with it. It's a great place to get started with the Model Zoo and get your solutions up and running quickly. So with that, I'll hand it back to Karthik for now, and we'll be back on the Studio UI shortly.
Cool. Thank you, Ram. That was a cool demo. Thank you. So yeah, try out SageMaker Canvas. Believe it's part of a free trial, so if you want to give it a spin and then try it out without learning ML, just you want to build a machine learning model, it's a great way to start. Switching gears, what if you wanted to write code? You're familiar with how you would build a ML model using a PyTorch framework or MXNet. SageMaker Studio is your answer if you're a data scientist or an ML engineer. Some of the capabilities of SageMaker, right? SageMaker offers a web-based IDE, so you can start with building your machine learning model, monitoring it, and managing it. What you can also do is, once you have your notebook experience, you can share that notebook with other users and collaborate. You could also upload it into GitHub right from your Jupyter Notebook environment. Every iteration of your machine learning workflow requires that you create an experiment, right? As your data and as your model changes, you want to be able to make sure that your model still offers the same level of accuracy. So SageMaker offers experiments where you can track all of your changes, be it in code, the set of notebooks that were used, and some of the things that Ram was showing with the list of different experiment runs. They can all be tracked with SageMaker experiments, and they're all integrated in the studio experience. And finally, as you build your machine learning models, you want to make sure that there are no bottlenecks in the system, right? There are various cases where you want to look for model accuracy. You want to make sure that you resolve those performance issues, and we have SageMaker Debugger and Profiler that helps you troubleshoot these issues. Whenever there is a error with a training run, you can have the debugger actually alert you back so you can actually address that issue. So that it offers a range of capabilities, and if you think about it, it's very similar to how you would operate any other IDE, right? Let's say if you're using a Java IDE or like a different language IDE, you typically follow the same steps. You would code it up, you would deploy it, you would troubleshoot it, and you would monitor it, and that all of those capabilities are part of your IDE, and you'd follow a similar process with SageMaker Studio. Now, if you look at the notebook experience of Studio, right, what we saw was customers using data science, data analytics, and data engineering all together, right? Often, customers have these as different units within their organization, but we also hear from customers that it's the same person who's performing these different roles. And today, the experience is the same person has to go to different tools and learn about them and then prepare your data. So Universal Notebooks gives you an easy way to do data preparation, like for example, by connecting to EMR cluster. You can discover, you can connect, and you can even manage EMR clusters right from SageMaker Notebooks. Once you connect to those EMR clusters, you can run Spark jobs, you can debug Spark jobs, and then have your data preparation and machine learning models right within the same notebooks. Universal Notebooks was launched at re:Invent last year, and you're welcome to try it out. It's GA, and the current capabilities support integration with EMR. The next aspect is in the programming language itself, right? We hear from customers that they want to use Python, but we also hear from customers that they want to use R for data science, right? Both are equally popular languages. SageMaker IDE allows you to use Python in a notebook environment. You can explore the data, you can build your machine learning models and deploy them. If you're an R developer, you can use RStudio, which is a popular IDE for R, and then you can perform your data analysis and statistical modeling using an R environment, right? The good part is both of these can now be used in SageMaker. RStudio for Amazon SageMaker was launched last year. What it allows you to do is use an RStudio environment right within SageMaker. SageMaker takes care of maintaining and scaling the environment necessary for your RStudio deployment. And what's more interesting is you can use your existing RStudio licenses, have it available in the license manager in AWS, and at no additional charge, you can have an RStudio environment in SageMaker. Because it's a familiar environment, the screenshot on the right is essentially what you would use in an RStudio. So you get the familiar interface, you can perform your statistical analysis. One of my favorite features is the storage volume between RStudio and your Jupyter Notebook is shared. So any code or data artifacts that you use in your RStudio environment can be made available to Python developers and vice versa. Anything that's done by Python developers can be made available to our developers. So it's sort of a collaboration that's already available. And it also lets you scale your infrastructure. You could start off with something as low as 4 gigabytes of RAM and maybe even scale it to something like 768 gigabytes of RAM, or even higher if there are instances that support that. So that's sort of the flexibility that you get by hosting RStudio on SageMaker. Now that we look at the languages, so the rest of the workflow, SageMaker is well integrated with the rest of the services and capabilities of your machine learning workflow. You can label data with Amazon Ground Truth. You can collect and prepare data. There's SageMaker Data Wrangler, which lets you transform data with a set of functions. You can identify the features in your data set and have that be stored and searchable in the SageMaker feature store. You can check your data set for correctness. You can process your data using SageMaker processing. Once you have your data be accessed via notebooks, you can use all of the libraries like matplotlib, and you can visualize the shape of your data right from within your notebook. We also talked about universal notebooks, which let you connect to EMR. You can pick any of the available algorithms or build your own. You can invoke distributed training across a set of nodes. There's hyperparameter optimization tuning. You look at your data set, and then you can tune the set of parameters. You can then deploy your model into production using SageMaker Inference. It provides a bunch of options right from async inference if you have a large workload, or if you have a spiky workload, you can choose to start with serverless inference, which was again a launch from re:Invent last year. Finally, you can monitor your models. There's SageMaker Model Monitor, and you can also have SageMaker MLOps, where you can set up your pipelines and orchestrate the entire model creation process. Just zooming in a bit on the operational side of deploying and managing the model, if you were to look at the MLOps workflow, you would start off with a project, right? Project is essentially encompassing all of your artifacts and lets you manage with set of pipeline templates that essentially call out how the entire workflow is orchestrated. Pipelines also provide a set of steps. A step could be, for example, to run a training job, or a step could be debugging a particular model, or a step could even be calling a Lambda function if you have an external integration outside of SageMaker. You could also integrate with processes that are already in your organization. Maybe you have requirements to integrate with Jenkins or Bitbucket. That can be done with SageMaker pipelines. And the models that you create off SageMaker are stored in the SageMaker model registry. So that also allows you to look for changes into your model, look for lineage, and how things have evolved over time. And finally, once you have the models, you can have them deployed in SageMaker. So the end-to-end traceability and integration is available right from SageMaker Studio, and you're welcome to choose some or all of these capabilities, right? Because these are all decoupled components. You can choose any of them. We have customers who rely more on SageMaker Inference, and some who start off with Studio and work through all the Studio notebooks and work through all the way with the rest of the capabilities. And that flexibility is available with SageMaker. So what we'll do now is look at another cool demo. Now this is going to be code heavy, and I'm going to call on Ram to show us the demo. Take it away, Ram.
Cool. Thanks, Karthik. So back in the console that I live in pretty much every day, but coming back here, we're going to return to the Studio UI. So Karthik covered a lot in that moment. So there's multiple different sub-services within SageMaker. As you'll come to realize, it's never just one service. There's so many different steps of the machine learning lifecycle. And there's always a sub-service that maps with each of those steps. So what Studio does is it really brings the visualization to each of these different sub-services and helps you pretty much orchestrate and understand your workflows in a very simple UI type manner. So to get started, the first thing Karthik said, say you don't want to use SageMaker at all. You just want a notebook where you can work with and have strong compute power. What we do is We provide notebooks and compute resources with certain images. So there's the data science image, for example, and you could create a notebook for it that immediately comes with sklearn, pandas, and other common data science libraries installed. And if I wanted to take a look at how that looked, let me just get some of these tabs out of here. Right here, if you notice, I created this notebook last night. It has a Python 3 data science kernel, and this is the compute power that I have associated with it. You can change your kernel whenever you want as well. Here in this kernel, it's just a simple sklearn model that I'm working with. And you'll notice I'm not using SageMaker at any point in time in it. So if you don't want to use SageMaker, you just want a universal notebook with pre-installed kernels, then this is always a good option. And this applies for other popular frameworks, such as TensorFlow as well. Same exact thing is happening here as in that sklearn notebook. I just have some basic TensorFlow code. sklearn also already comes pre-installed, and I'm able to iterate through this, do model training as I want. And you can look at a list of all these kernels by going to the launcher again, and you can see these different images that we have supported. So there's data science, popular frameworks, MXNet, PyTorch, TensorFlow, and one of the things that Karthik also referenced was Spark Magic. So if you have data engineering where you want to connect to EMR, one of our recently supported capabilities was a Spark kernel. So you could use this to have any processing jobs or just work with that framework in specific. So there's no must on using SageMaker in Studio itself, and that's where the whole idea of a universal notebook comes from. Take the image that makes sense for you, take the compute power that makes sense for your training workload or feature engineering, and then go ahead with it. And then that brings us into our next point. Say you do want to work within SageMaker, right? As Karthik was saying, there's numerous components, and I'm going to be capturing it all in the scope of MLOps, but once again, you can pick and choose which services that you want to work with. If you go right here to this icon at the bottom, the first and foremost thing that you're going to hear about is called a project. So what SageMaker Projects is it provides pre-made templates. If you want to experience different parts of the ML lifecycle on SageMaker and you don't really know where to get started, you could use projects as a building block. And what this does is it provides foundational code. These are all 1P templates that will automatically create a SageMaker pipeline for you. And SageMaker Pipelines is the premier MLOps service within SageMaker that integrates with our different sub-features, such as Model Registry, Data Wrangler, Model Monitor, SageMaker Clarify. So all these services are kind of brought together in these templates. So what I did was I selected this MLOps template for model building, training, deployment, and monitoring. And all of these are orchestrated through code, as Karthik was saying, but it provides this boilerplate project right here. So if I open up this boilerplate project right there, you'll notice that a URI was immediately created. And if I can filter this out using the UI, and that URI is the source code for the example that was built. And this example uses the abalone data set for regression, and it pretty much iterates through the entire machine learning lifecycle using different SageMaker services. I cloned this code locally into my SageMaker developer environment. So right here, if I open this up, you'll see all three of those repositories are populated and existing within there. And before I go into the code itself, we can take a look at the UI that was automatically created for us. So if I click on pipelines right here, this is the pipeline that was automatically created. So this is an MLOps kind of workflow that was already made using that project. I didn't adjust any code myself in this at all. If I double click on that and I want to see a graph of how the UI looks, if I zoom in right here, and let me go into an execution actually that I have pre-built. If I zoom in right here, this is the automatic UI or MLOps flow that was generated from that 1P template. So you can take the parts of this that you want. These are all the different steps that were configured within the boilerplate code that was already provided. So there's pre-processing being done here. There's data quality being done here for model monitoring. There's training being done. There's create model being done. And then there's also clarify, which does bias and clarify detection. All of these are configured within that boilerplate project. And I executed that pipeline, and you can see that took 24 minutes to execute. Now say that you want to strip out certain parts of these. We don't always need all these steps in our MLOps workflow. There's only certain sub-services we might want to work with. The easy way to go about this is we can take that local path that we've cloned, go into model build, go into pipelines. These are all different utility functions that you can play around and work with. And if I go here, there's one main script called pipeline.py. Once again, this applies to the abalone data set, but you can substitute it for your own data set, take this code and adjust it as you want. That's the whole point of projects, to pretty much bootstrap all that work. If I scroll down to the end of this, all the way to the end, you'll see the steps that Karthik was talking about. You can pretty much configure using the SageMaker Python SDK these different steps for pre-processing, training, registering a model, or model building, or model monitoring and deployment. and even a Lambda step was one of the new features that we introduced to pretty much work with external services. So the power in all of this is everything we put in code, you can see in Studio as well. If I go back to this icon, for example, you'll notice that I have a register model step in here. How do I visualize that in the model registry? If I go down this UI and click on model registry, you'll see that there's automatically a model group created in this UI. This is the version that was created when I first executed that pipeline. And you can enable this to create multiple versions, catalog your models, see which one you want to bring to production. At the same time, another feature that Karthik brought up was experiments and trials. And you'll notice that an experiment was automatically created here as well for that one execution that I had. And what this experiment/trial right here is doing is it's comparing and profiling the clarify and bias detected. That's what I've set it up to do in this example. So in essence, you can use Studio to great depths, but also great flexibility. None of these features are forced upon you. You could have a pipeline with just training. Say you just want to train your model, iterate over it numerous times. That's completely fine as well. You just execute this DAG or graph numerous times. Say you add one where you just want to train and register a model. That's completely fine as well. That would just be what we're showing here. So you can take this project template as a bootstrap to get started with, adjust it for your data set, adjust it for your ML workflow. There's great visibility and flexibility that comes with using SageMaker in that sense. So Studio is very powerful in the sense that, just to wrap it up, is you can use it for completely non-SageMaker purposes, just to use a notebook where you might want to do your classic data engineering or model building work. And then you have the entire MLOps workflow suite available as well. So I know there are numerous services in there. And before I hand it back to Karthik, if any of you want to grill me on that later on the Q&A or meet after, we can discuss all of those in depth. But I'll let him wrap it up.
Cool. Thank you, Ram. That was a good demo. So you have the choice of using SageMaker Studio. Again, it's available as part of trial if you want to fire it up and then write code with some of the popular ML frameworks, try out a Hugging Face model. You definitely have that flexibility to do that. So in the final section, let's look at how students and researchers can use SageMaker Studio Lab. Right? SageMaker Studio Lab was something we launched at re:Invent last year. It's in preview. What it allows you to do is focus more on the notebook experience. As you're learning ML, you want to focus on what are the different frameworks, how do I build this model, and not worry about how do I deploy it into production, how do I scale my model. That's sort of your step 2, right? You want to focus on your step 1. And what it allows you to do is sign up for an account using just your email address. You're not creating an AWS account here, so you don't have to use your credit card, and SageMaker Studio Lab is free. It offers both GPU and CPU resources for free. GPU is for up to 4 hours for every session, and with CPU you get about 12 hours of CPU per session. So that's good enough to try out with many of the models as you're learning. And there is a vetting process, so once you sign up for SageMaker Studio Lab, you would get a confirmation saying that you have been granted access. And once you log into the system, you'll be presented with a bunch of examples from Machine Learning University. You'll be presented with examples from Hugging Face. These are notebooks that are already available in GitHub, right? You just point to that GitHub example and you can try it out right away in your environment. And you can also create your own deep links as you learn and you want to maintain your own GitHub repo. You can create deep links and share it with other users. And when they click on those, they would be taken into a UI where they'd be presented with a read-only notebook. And of course, like you see in the screenshot on the left, this is a ResNet model that I had created when I was learning ML. And I pushed it on GitHub, and the link was available to pretty much everyone. Once you load it up in your environment, you have an option, that little purple icon that you see that says copy to your project. So it loads a copy of the public GitHub notebook into your repository, and you can iterate through it. And then you can, of course, start the runtime with either CPU or GPU. The other interesting capability is the notebook experience in Studio Lab is similar to the one that you saw with the SageMaker Studio notebook that Ram was showing about. So whenever you think that you have learned enough about the framework or the model creation process, you can take that notebook and migrate it to SageMaker Studio and have it deployed in production and take advantage of all of the MLOps capabilities that are already present. So just to wrap it up, SageMaker provides capabilities that cater a broad set of personas and makes ML more accessible and cost-effective. You have no-code and low-code capabilities if those are your starting points as business users to try out machine learning. You can use Canvas, you can use pre-built solutions with Jumpstart, or you can use Autopilot, which has both the code and the no-code options. If you want to go deep into code and experiment with frameworks and deploy machine learning models in production, SageMaker Studio is a great place to start. It also has integrations with other capabilities in the ML workflow. So you can start with all the way from notebooks to deploying and monitoring and managing your models in production. And finally, we looked at SageMaker Studio Lab. It's in preview, and you can use it for free to just learn about ML and experiment it for free. With that, we'd like to wrap it up and take any Q&As. Please go ahead. You may want to, I believe there's a mic somewhere, so you may want to, or I can repeat the question.
For the endpoint, how do you control security? So if you just want it within your VPC or within, how do you control it? Outside of the turnkey, is it going to everyone in the world? How do you control that?
Yeah. So by default, it is public, and you could access it as a REST API. But if you configure deployment within VPC, even your notebooks or endpoints, there's VPC isolation mode that you can configure for. Just for the sake of the demo, I made it a public endpoint. But for the most part, you can enable network isolation, and you can encrypt your endpoint.
Cool. Any other questions? Go for it.
Sorry.
Is there any reason to use SageMaker instances over SageMaker Studio? Or where are the cons and pros of using each service? I used SageMaker Studio a few years ago. There weren't as many features, but I was wondering in terms of 2022, is there any reason to use one?
What was the other one? SageMaker Studio versus what was the other one you called up?
SageMaker instances. So
Do you mean the classic notebooks?
The classic notebooks.
Okay.
You could still use the classic notebooks. That's a great way to start if you want a vanilla Jupyter notebook environment. But the Studio offers the integration with the rest of the workflow. And you can access all of the capabilities. Like recently, Studio launched capability for adding your own lifecycle configuration hooks. You can bring your own images and attach it to the Studio environment. So there's a lot more flexibility and capability that has been added since, I guess 3 years when Studio was launched. So it's a lot more powerful, flexible, and it's on close to being on par with the classic notebook experience.
I'd say in general, if you have an MLOps workflow, Studio is where you should be going. Just because as you saw, all the services, they provide a UI related with everything you're working with as well. In classic notebooks, you can do a good amount of the same stuff as Karthik said, but you don't get the same visual kind of workflow reference that you might get from Studio.
Cool. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to reach out. Ram and I will be available to answer any questions offline. The whole bunch of content available for certifications and skill building. There's a QR code out here. I'll keep it here for a few seconds. And thank you for attending. That's our Twitter and GitHub handles in case you want to reach us out. And please complete your session survey. Thank you for joining, and hope you all try out SageMaker and let us know your feedback. Thank you.